in the Leonardtown Fire Department. Claude Rayleigh. God, this brings back.
Yeah, if it brings back a lot of memories.
He was one of the first GS-16 type guys, heavy duty. Elmer Smith, charter member of the fire department. Walt Siebert and I worked in the shop together. Audrey Sides used to deliver, he and Shoup delivered stuff to him all the time. Let's see if Willenberg's in here.
Is Cynthia coming here today?
I think
She's coming for the afternoon.
Okay, I'd love for her to see this.
Leroy Willenberg and his brother, Paul. Roger Wilson. Margaret Gateman.
I can leave those
Should
books
make it.
with you as long as Keith brings them back to me.
Okay.
P. Wilson and his son.
If
Yeah.
you want somebody else
this
to
is-
look at them.
This is the group that I remember most. You know,
Yeah, these are yours. These are mine.
Don't let them get by with anything, Teresa. Okay. I'm going to leave you be. I think she can't have anything decaffeinated, so
Okay.
anything with water. I think there is water in the icebox.
Okay. I don't think I need anything.
Before we start, can I get you to clip this onto your comment?
Oh. It is. Oh, I see, this way.
Actually, you can take the mic out.
Where am I going to attach it? Can I attach it here?
Yeah,
If I can't pinch it. My thumbs are. Thank you.
Okay. And actually, also, kind of before we start, I'm going to ask you a couple questions about this biographical intake sheet.
Okay.
Just kind of some basic information about yourself.
Yeah, this is for the historical trust. They kind of do the same things for every test, right, Andrew?
Yeah.
So that they have good background information on all the people. So if somebody wants to do historical studies after the fact, you know, and some of this will get into historic trust, so. Okay.
I want to know what's going to be in there. I haven't got much time.
Oh, yeah. She's the youngest. She was the sickliest of all the kids. She was one of 9. She was the baby of 9, okay? My mother was next to her. But she had all the bad stuff happen to her when she was young. So now she's just going to go right into that centurion thing.
Yeah.
And Teresa, I'll see you. I got another meeting at 10 o'clock. Okay?
Okay.
Take good care of her.
We will.
Okay. See you guys.
All right. I guess I already have your name, today's date. Is your mailing address 21639 Thistle Road?
Thistle Place.
Thistle Place?
Mhm.
Okay.
Lexington Park.
That's the phone number I called you with yesterday.
Yeah.
Can I have your date of birth?
3/27/16.
Okay, and your birthplace?
Washington, D.C.
Your street address in the Flat Tops or Lexington Manor?
I had 3 of them. 45 Tanner Place. 83 Rennell. And number 4 Misima Place.
Okay. The dates that you lived in the Flat Tops?
In the Flat Tops. Now let me see here. I've got it written down here somewhere. Let me see, I moved in 1952, Tanner Avenue, and 58 on Rennell, and it's 65 in Misima Place.
When did you move out?
I moved out of, I guess it must have been about 66 or 65, 66, or I guess it was 66.
Okay.
I moved to St. Inigo's.
And you were a resident. Let's see. You brought in 2 books.
1949 and 1959.
What are they called? Just Patuxent River.
Patuxent River in
It's like a yearbook?
Yes, they put them out every 10 years.
Okay. Okay. And then also, if I could have you sign, this is a release form, just saying that the interview can go into the archives here at the museum and in the Maryland Historical Trust. Actually, let me give you a pen.
I was going to say that isn't very good.
And that way they'll go into the archives and that people who are doing research can use the interview.
Now, it says print.
Yeah, print here, and then on the back there's a
Oh.
space for a signature. Okay.
Same.
And then that's where I sign.
Oh, okay.
And then on this page, you can just, if you want to just sign here, or sign here, and put the date, and then I can fill in your name, address, and phone
Okay.
number. Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Oh, here's the top to your pen.
Okay. Actually, before we get going, do you think you could ask them to turn off the music? Is it picking up?
No, I don't hear it.
Okay. Okay. Well then, today is June 6th, 2007. I'm interviewing Teresa Schaffer in the Naval Air Museum in Lexington Park about her time living in the Flat Tops, or Lexington Manor. So I guess my first question is, could you tell me a little bit about the people who lived in Lexington Manor?
Well, most of the people that lived, well, I guess all of the people lived there worked on the base, and they were various size families, and it was a good place to live because it was available to work, and it was available for shopping, and churches and everything was very handy. And the people that lived there, well, we knew everybody, it seemed. It was quite a community, and it was a nice place. It was the rent was very reasonable, and the schools were available, and I think everybody was happy there. We always had a very good neighbors, kind and generous, and we enjoyed it there.
Okay. Could you tell me a little bit about the people who you came to know who were from the county, since you came from Washington, D.C.?
Right.
So could you tell me a little bit about the people who you came to know who were from the county, and how people who were new to the county and people who had lived in the county for generations came, and how they got along with each other?
Well, the way we came down here was, my husband was from Mechanicsville, and he worked at the government printing office in Washington. That's where I met him. And we came down here he came down here in 1942 to work on the base, the construction. And then he went to civil service because he had worked for the printing office in Washington. And then I didn't go to work until 1948. But I met up with Marion Orsini, she was from New York, and her and her husband had come down here too to go to work. And the people that lived around here, there were a lot of people that lived around here that got jobs too. And but most of them were from out of town. And my husband was, of course, one that was a native. Well, he wasn't a native. He was born in Pennsylvania, but he came down here when he was only 2 years old. So he was considered a St. Mary's County. And you have to live here a long time before they'll accept you as St. Mary's County, and let me tell you. But I knew a lot of people. There were the Owenses and the Pratts, and I think they were mostly from down here, natives. There were the Deans. There was several other families, I suppose. Let me see. But there were quite a few of them that were from the county.
Okay. Can you describe how the Navy or the Navy base influenced and shaped life in the community?
Well, it was a big to-do when it was open, I can tell you. That I don't think the St. Mary's Countyans appreciated it at first, but it was such a big deal for this county that they really did appreciate it then, because they knew they were bringing in a lot of people and everything was becoming up to date. Everything was pretty old time when we first came here. And I think they, well, I suppose that they did appreciate it because it did bring a lot of business down here. But other than that, I don't know of anything else.
Okay. Can you just tell me a little bit what you mean by old time when you first came down here?
Well, when we first came down here, they were not up to the standard that it was in Washington, D.C. And, well, when the base opened up, it really was an eye-opener for a lot of these people down here. They were pretty, well, I don't know, I can't say they were the old time, but they were not up to, it wasn't like a big city. And but the people were they were such good people down here. They were wonderful people. They were generous and they were kind, and I think that's why everybody enjoyed it so much.
Okay. Can you tell me a little bit about shopping in St. Mary's County and where you did your shopping and banking and things?
Well, the First National Bank was about the only bank that was open right when we came down. And there were several other banks that did open, one in Leonardtown, one in Mechanicsville. And we shopped at the A&P. They had opened a store down here. And then there were a lot of little stores, privately owned. Cecil's was one of them, and that was real convenient. And the only thing was, it wasn't too many department stores to buy clothes. You had to go to Washington if you wanted to do too much shopping, or Baltimore, one of the two.
Okay. What changes have you seen and witnessed?
There's been a big change. for one thing, we lived in Mechanicsville for a little while before we moved to the Flat Tops too, and my husband was working down here before I went to work, and I had 2 little children then, and one of them went out on the main highway. She got away from me. I was in the back of the house, and she went out the front at the porch, and she went out on the main road, and there was a good thing the traffic wasn't bad at that time. She was running down the road. She wanted to get her daddy. And, oh, I was scared to death. Boy, from then on, I had a rope around her. I didn't let her go out anymore. But the traffic wasn't bad at all. And the stores that have built up and the businesses that have come down here, it's just amazing.
Okay. Well, how about in the, I guess you lived in the Flat Tops for about, let's see, 1966, 1952.
Yeah, it was over 10 years, I know.
Yeah. How about in that 10-year period of time, were there any changes you observed in the Flat Tops?
Well, I didn't observe anything in the Flat Tops. They were kept up. They kept them up pretty well. But I didn't see any drastic changes.
Okay. Were there any community traditions in the Flat Tops? Any festivals or anything like that?
No. I don't remember anything going on in the, like community fairs or anything. But, and in that paper that I had, it said something about, did they have dancing? Well, I never saw any dancing in the streets, I suppose everybody was just too busy with their families. There was not too much community stuff then.
How did you get your mail? Like, where was the post office? Was there a mailman?
We had to go to the post office to pick up the mail, and I still do, believe it or not. It's not delivered even today. But, yeah, we had to go to the post office to pick up the mail. He had a Lexington Park boxes. Mm-hmm.
How much did stamps cost?
Well, I have some at home that are still 2 and 3 cents. But I think at that time it must have been around 5, 7 cents. Mm-hmm.
Could you tell me a little more about Lexington Park specifically when you lived in the Flat Tops? Just kind of just what it was like to live there.
Well, we found it very convenient. That was the main thing, and we had good neighbors, and everything was. We didn't have any rough stuff down there. Not when I was in that area.
Okay. Can you tell me, where did you work while you lived at Lexington Manor? Or did you work?
I worked on the base. I went to work in 1948 at electronics test. And I was the secretary. I had had a few years, I think 3 6-month appointments in Washington. I had worked first. And then when I came down here, I went into work, and the salary, I think, that I made first was $1,600 a year. And $1,620, I think it was. And I was the secretary at that electronics test division, and I worked there a long time. I worked there, I guess it must have been 10 or 12 years. And then I worked up on the staff for about, well, I had about 28 and a half years on the base. and I worked the rest of the time up on the staff, the Naval Air Test Center staff. There were two sides, you know, the Navy and Naval Air Station and the Naval Air Test Center. But I worked on the Test Center side.
Okay. Were there any specific people who you remember that you worked with that you particularly enjoyed working with or have stories to tell about?
Yeah, Mary Orsini I met her when I went in to fill out the application, and we went to work at the same time. I went to work in the radio section, and she worked in the what do you call it? Operations, where they scheduled all the planes and stuff. And we used to have lunch together each day, and I got to know her pretty well. But she didn't live in the Flat Tops. She lived in Valley Lee, and and her husband worked on the base too. And we had many a good time together. And then on the base, they used to have each division, the flight test, service test, and electronics test, and they would have picnics, like on Friday afternoon. They'd let us have a half a day off, and we'd have a picnic, and that was kind of community, I guess. And we had really good times with there.
What kinds of things did you do for fun?
With 4 children, I didn't do much. Things, well, they did have a movie in Hughesville, and we went to Hughesville once in a while and do a week, maybe 1 week out of a month or something. But we just had to have. We visited our neighbors, and we had cookouts, and just like they do now. And our main thing was that on every 2 weeks on our payday, we'd go to Washington and to visit with Keith and his family, his mother and their family. And we'd go up on Friday night and spend the weekend and come back Sunday night. And that was a lot of our entertainment.
Okay. You mentioned your children. Where did they go to school?
They both, well, the 2 oldest ones, when we moved down here, they had gone to St. Joseph's in Morganza. And then when we moved down here, I think the oldest one went, maybe the 2 of them might have gone 1 year at Frank Knox, but the 2 youngest ones started at Frank Knox, and then transferred them to Little Flower School at where is it? Great Mills, down that way.
Okay.
They all graduated from there, and the oldest girl, she went to the academy for her high school, but the others went to Great Mills High School.
Okay. You mentioned that every 2 weeks you would go with your family up to Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever do any other traveling around the area, around Maryland? Or?
No, once in a while we'd go to Pennsylvania. Freddie's had people in Pennsylvania, and we'd go up there for a visit, but we didn't do too much traveling.
Okay. Where did you worship?
At Immaculate Heart of Mary Church, and Catholic Church. Mm-hmm.
What was church life like back then?
Just like it is now, as far as I'm concerned. It was well organized, and I've been Catholic all my life, so I went to Catholic high school, got all my education in a Catholic school. So it was convenient, and we enjoyed it.
How did you spend your evenings?
Well, with 4 children, you know, you don't have much time for anything else except schoolwork, except in the summertime. And we did go to the beach now and then. And used to play cards with neighbors. I don't think we did much other stuff.
Which beach would you go to?
Sand Gates, up there near Morganza. No, not Morganza. Where is it? It's on the way down from town, anyway. We went there, and sometimes we'd go on the base, but not very often, because that was really mostly for military. But yeah, we went to Sand Gates. In fact, we used to rent a place down there in the summertime for about a week or 2. But well, we just lived our life together with our families. That's the only thing I know.
Okay. How did you come to live in Lexington Manor, the Flat Tops?
I was living in Mechanicsville. We had rented a little house there, and when I went to work in 1948, we were still living there, and I developed an ulcer driving to work every day, and the doctor recommended that I move closer to the base, and so we came down here to see if we could get a little place, and we found the Flat Tops. So that's why we moved down here.
Okay. Can you tell me a little bit more about your life before you moved to Lexington Manor, or the Flat Tops?
Well, I lived in Washington, D.C., went to St. Aloysius Church, went to school there at St. Aloysius, Notre Dame High School, and like Keith said, there were 9 of us, and we had a great family, good family life, and I didn't realize that until I got a little older. But I had 4 sisters and 4 brothers. We had a good life.
Can you tell me a little more about your family and who they were and how you guys got along?
Well, there were 4 boys and 4 girls, and I was the last one. And we lived on K Street. Of course, it's not there anymore. The houses are all gone. And my mom and dad were really good, strict Catholics, and we all went to Catholic schools. And my oldest brother, Ed, got killed. He had been in the First World War, and when he came home, he got married, and they built a home, and he was building a chicken coop wanted to raise chickens. And on March 11th, 1924, he was went out to get on, sweep the boards off so that they wouldn't warp, and he caved in and he killed him, broke his neck. And he had served in the Army. And my brother John worked in the post office department and worked there, I guess, for about 35 years. My third brother was William, and he worked for the district government. And my father had a stroke after my oldest brother was killed, and my brother Will then took over, and he never married. He put us through school and took care of my mother up until she died. And then Tom worked for the Railway Express. He retired from there. And Mary worked as an accountant, and she married, had 6 children. Elizabeth, she went to, she worked for a pharmaceutical company. And then Frances, she used to work for the Safeway store. Let me see, Grace worked on the base, Keysmone. And we had a good life.
You just mentioned all of your siblings' first names. What's your maiden name?
O'Brien.
O'Brien?
O-B-R-I-E-N. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Irish.
Why did you leave Lexington Manor?
Well, first of all, we had to move. The government wanted the place closed up, I guess, or they were going to sell it or do something with it. And they told us that we'd have to move. So we found a house in Patuxent Park, 2-story house. And we moved there. We were there for a few years before I moved to St. Inigo's. So we were there. We probably would have stayed longer. But because the rent was real reasonable. So it was, we were happy there. But we liked it in Patuxent Park too. But the reason I moved is they told us that we had to move. Now they're gone.
Can you tell me a little more about when the government told you you had to move and when they were going to sell the area?
Property. Well, they just gave us notice, and they gave us a certain time to get out. And we were fortunate to find a place in Patuxent Park at that time. But I don't think it was, I think we probably knew that it wasn't going to last forever.
Okay. Let's see. Can you tell me about the impact that that things like segregation and the civil rights movement had on Lexington Park?
Yeah, there was some dissension when that was taking place, and I know at first they used to make the black people go to back doors to buy stuff, and the black people down here, they were good people. Nobody ever had any trouble with them until that started. I think that just stirred it up. And the bar rooms, they couldn't serve them. They had to go to the back door to get their stuff there. And of course, when this came up, then people had a different attitude. Some were very pleased at what was happening, and others weren't. But and I think there were a few ruffled feathers, and but I didn't think there was too much as far as I was concerned.
Okay. I've read about Carver Heights as the African American almost equivalent of the Flat Tops. How did people in the Flat Tops and in Carver Heights interact?
Well, I think they were friendly. I don't think they had any problems, between the two, even though one was black and one was white, but at least we never had any trouble. And I knew a lot of those that lived in Carver Heights, and they were good people too. But I suppose there was some dissension, but I didn't hear too much about it.
Okay. How about like the Korean War? And since it was a Navy housing area, how did events like the Korean War affect the neighborhood?
Gosh, I didn't think there was anything. I don't know. I have no idea. I know there was a war, and I know there was a lot going on, but I just didn't get into it, I guess. But now when it went into Vietnam, I got in that one because my son went in there. He went in the Army and served in Vietnam for about 2 years. Thank God he didn't have any trouble. He got back home safe. But the Korean War, I don't remember too much about anything going on in our area.
Can you tell me a little bit about what went on during the Vietnam War in this area?
In the area? Well, I couldn't tell you that either, except that a lot of our young boys went. We were concerned, and I don't really know anything about them. If I have, I've forgotten it.
Okay. Can you describe the houses that you lived in while you were living in the Flat Tops?
Well, the first house we had had 3 bedrooms. The only objection I had to it was the heat system. There were heat ducts at the top of rooms instead of on the floor. And at night, when it was bitter cold, it wasn't very comfortable because, of course, heat rises, and the heat was up there and it wouldn't come down. I said if we could have put our chairs and stuff up on the roof, up on the ceiling, we could have kept warm. But it wasn't very warm, I tell you. They weren't very good. That was not a good system. That's the only thing I objected to. Oh, and the black floors. I didn't like them either. They had black tile and floor that showed every footprint. But I only had 3 bedrooms the first time, but then my brother that was a single, he came down and lived with us for a while, and that's why we got moved again, because we got a 4-bedroom unit, and it was gave us a little bit more room. But the kitchens were so small. Oh man, you couldn't eat in the kitchen. You had a little dining room off of the living room, and it was the same room, but it was just one section. You could have a dining room table, but the kitchens were mighty small. Of course, it was a lot easier to keep clean too. I found out after I moved in Opaque. But it worked. We survived.
How did you mentioned the heating system in the house? How did you heat the house?
There was a furnace as you came in the door. There was a furnace right ahead of it. And first we used just wood, then finally we got coal. And they would bring coal. There was a little place outside the door that they put coal. And but when we went to Washington on those weekends, when we come home, our neighbor would come over and start the fire, because the house would be freezing by the time we got home. And that's why I say we had such beautiful neighbors. And but that's what we heated with, coal and wood.
Okay. Can you tell me about an especially fond memory of life in the Flat Tops?
Yeah, when Keith and them moved down here, there were six children, and my sister, of course. There was 7 of them, and there was 4 of my children, and my brother, that was 5, and my husband and I, that was 7. So there was 14 people. So when they wanted to move down, they wanted to come down and look around, see if they could find a place. Well, they moved down, and all of them moved in with us. Our neighbors commented that the house must be made of rubber, because they didn't know where we put everybody. There was 14 of us in that 4. Well, of course, we had 4 bedrooms, but they were also sleeping everywhere else. And they stayed with us for a couple of months, and we had the best time. It was a wonderful time. My sister Grace was such a good woman.
Do you want me to get you some Kleenex?
I think I have some here. But such a... Excuse me.
It's okay.
Anyway, it was so funny, because they moved down in the summer and it wasn't so bad then, but then when they started to school, we only had the 1 bathroom, and I had to get them up in shifts. But those Keith and his whole family have stayed so close. You know, it's just like we were one great big family. And they've stuck close to me. all this time. Just like my own kids. We had such a good time, and I don't know how in the world we did it, but we did.
Okay. What is the one thing that you most want people to remember about the Flat Tops?
That they were a godsend for a lot of people, because people had to come down here to go to work, and it was so hard to find places. And it was really convenient for all of us that moved there. I don't know what we'd have done if we hadn't, because there really wasn't enough homes around to even, if you wanted to buy a house, there wasn't anything at all. So it was wonderful that they built those places for us.
Okay. Well, that's the last of the prepared questions I have for you. Is there anything else that you want to talk about with regard to the Flat Tops?
No, except it was kind of sad to see them go.
And then one last thing, I can bring them over. That if you see on that wall, I have a big map of the Flat Tops.
Mm-hmm.
If I could get you to point out which ones you lived in, if you can remember.
If I can remember.
I'm going to bring them over.
Oh. That's Tanner. Now, where's 40 here? It is 44. 40, that says 46, doesn't it?
Yeah. 48, 46.
And this is 44, so it must have been right in here. I know it was 45 Tanner. And where's Rennell? I've lived on... Oh. See, I'm blind. Yeah. And then 83 Rennell. Yeah, Rennell. Haven't got the numbers. Yes, I do. That's Tanner.
Rennell goes up and down too.
Yeah. Is there 83 over there?
76.
It was right near the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, because see that they tore down those that we lived in, and that's why I moved to Misima Place, wherever that is. Misima.
Right here.
Yeah. Yeah, see, we lived at number 4.
So, right here at the end?
Mm-hmm. Right at the end. Mm-hmm. That was a nice place because it was brand new. They had just built them for us. I worked for a captain that got me the 4-bedroom house. He was really kind. Yeah. What are they going to do with it? Do you have any idea? Was there any
that remain?
Well,
there are two that are still standing.
oh, are they going to keep them?
Uh-huh, they have to.
And where are they?
They're these, I think they're these two.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
I think, because I know they have one from each section.
Oh.
Because there was this section was built first, and then that section was built the next year.
There?
So they have to have one from each section for the historical preservation laws.
Oh, I see. Mm-hmm.
Do you know who lived in those?
There's a list.
My name in them.
Okay.
Just keep it. I think I'll
Yeah.
make sure I get them back.
Yeah.
I'll make sure he gets them back before he goes on vacation.
Yeah.
When is he going on vacation?
Friday or Saturday.
Okay.
But we can have...
See, I didn't have this one. I had this one belonged to that Morgan family, I think, and
Yeah,
John
that's right.
Henry Morgan, and he was. I don't think he lived in the Flat Top, but he worked on the base, and I think he was in the military before, but then he went to work for the base. But he's. They never had any children, that family, and they lived up on 235 in a little tiny little house. But she just died not too long ago. She was way up in her 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And
Where do you live in St. Inigo's?
I lived right on the water down there outside the Nessie Place,
Oh, you live down Villa Road?
Villa Road.
And then Grayson? Do you go down Villa and then Grayson Road?
No, just
Villa?
what's the name of it? St. Inigo's Road.
Oh, before you get to Grayson.
St. Inigo's Road.
Well, there's Villa Road.
Well, Villa Road is the big road.
Right.
Then you can turn off Villa Road onto St. Inigo's Road.
Okay, okay,
And it's down on the water.
okay.
Mhm.
Do you know Pat Woodburn?
At Woodburn, yeah.
Yeah, he's a good Catholic boy.
Yes, he sure is.
Yeah. He works
He's
at
a nice
Webster,
family.
at Nessie, yeah.
Yeah.
They are very
Yeah.
nice.
Well, that, before Nessie opened, where I worked in electronics test, they had what they called, let me see now if I can remember. What the heck was the name of that before they sent it down there? Airport lighting was what it was at first. Then it changed another name, but I worked for them for a little while too. And and then they moved, when they moved the whole shebang down there, I just went to another section. So, yeah, that was a nice place down there on the water. I lived down there for a good 20-some years.
And you're still there?
No, I'm in back up in the park.
Yeah.
Yeah, I sold that at the, we were on the water and we had a big, what do you call it? Out in the water.
Dock.
Dock.
Yeah.
And in the wintertime, the water would freeze and the thing would come up, and then you had to have it put down again, and trying to get somebody to do it. And my husband died, and I said, I can't handle this anymore. So my daughter moved back up from Florida, and we moved in the park into the greens for a little while. And then we found this house at where I live now.
Where is it in Lexington Park?
It's down. It's not Lexington Park. Well, it's Lexington Park, but it's down by. That goes across there. My brains are not working today.
Great Mills?
No. No, you go down south towards Ridge.
The at development off of Hermanville Road?
Yeah, off of Hermanville, yeah.
Yeah, isn't it green something?
No, it's
across from the greens?
no, it's what the heck am I trying to say?
Yeah, I can't think of it either, so but I know where about
Cedar Lane. Cedar
Cove. Yes,
That's
yeah.
Cedar Cove, that's where we live.
Do you need one of us, did you want to go back to the church?
Oh.
Or you tell us what you'd like to do, or, and are we done? I mean,
Well, if somebody could take me back to the church, my daughter's working in the pantry at the church,